Why, hello, everyone. I'll wait here just a minute and let a few people get on. Just make sure everything's working. Let me know if there's any problem with the audio or video, of course. I've had a lot of problems with these live streams. I'll tell you, it seems like there's always something that goes on. So we'll see. I'm not very good at this. Getting close here. Okay, look at my notes. What do I want to talk to you guys about today? Well, let's see. There's Mike Long. Hi, Mike. I'm glad you're on this feed. Great to have you here. Wank. Hope you're doing well, Wank. Some of these people I know. I'm awake, says Sweet Breeze Meadow. I'll just read off a few random people here. Isabella Me. I remember Isabella Me. Been around a long time. I think you're one of the early followers. Good to see you here. Wow, live, says Dave Decker. Yeah, it is kind of surprising. And hopefully we won't have any technical glitches. North Carolina. Yeah. Boulder City, Nevada. Clark Pearson. Yeah. White Pocket in the Vermilion Cliffs blows my mind. It sure does. I've been there a couple times way back in the early days when people didn't know about it. Unfortunately, it's a little overrun now. The last time I went there were just too many people. And I went in December, believe it or not. Yeah, and we were in a tent. My dear wife was with us. Remember that, dear? It got cold. Ice in the morning. Yeah, and there were still a lot of people there. Cool place, though. Jersey Shore. Yeah, thank you for coming on. Dave from Boulder. Yeah, okay. You were on, oh, David Thompson. Yeah, I remember you. Surprisingly, boy, I'll tell you, sometimes I'm not even sure if I remember myself. Pueblo, Colorado. Yeah, Spur, Texas. Caprock Canyons. Oh, yeah, nice. You know, that video I did on Texas here recently on West Texas was sure a hit. Texas has treated me well. Brandon from Grable. Yeah, Brandon. Right next door. Phoenix, we have. Yeah, happy Valentine's Day to Myron and the wife. Happy Valentine's Day coming here, dear. She's just right over there. Dallas. Lived in Dallas a while. I know that place. Sheridan, Lakeside, California. Wow. Terrell Hopkins, an old friend of mine. And he is getting old, huh, Terrell? Denver. Yeah. Well, we've got quite a group here, and I'm excited to talk to you. You know, I was thinking about what are some of the things. Of course, I'll have a Q&A, and we'll have some time with that. But I thought, you know, I'd kind of go over a little bit about my year and how it went. I was surprised. I just counted them up here a bit ago, an hour ago or so, how many videos I'd done. I've done 11 videos this year. I thought I'd done fewer, actually. I started on the East Coast. It's about the Jersey quake. In reality, I built that video with no thought of a Jersey quake at all. And literally, I think it was a few hours or a half a day, I can't remember, after I published the video, they had a quake there out there to the east. And so that helped out my video, and I changed the title to it. Then I did one that I was surprised that people weren't clicking on that much. It's one of my poorer performers about the origin of Ice Age weapons. And to my mind, I thought it was really interesting, but what do I have? 103,000 views on that one. So one of my, poor performers. Then I went out into my beloved Badlands and did what do I call that? Rocks Left as a Trail to Treasure, a string of boulders and what it led to. That was fun last spring. And then Arches National Park. That was a big job. Let me tell you, I put more miles on my Jeep. We had a little camper out there. We got snowed on. It was quite the deal. Just spectacular. We loved it. My wife, Merlane, was with me, so it was all good. Then I did one here close by. Explain This, Sawtooth Mystery. You might comment which of these you like the best, but Sawtooth Mystery. Boy, that was a popular one. That's already got over 1 million views, so obviously I'm happy about that. Then I had another good video that took right off, and that's on the hot springs in Thermopolis. What a cool place. In fact, I'm going to be doing a presentation here in Thermopolis Saturday, I believe. A week from today. Yeah. To the Historical Society or something there. I'm looking forward to that. Then I released another one on Arches National Park. Now, that one's one that I was a little surprised that, again, it didn't get that much interest. I said it was one of my top 10 finds ever. I've changed the title just recently, just playing around. You can change titles or thumbnails and stuff to see if it changes how many people click on it. And you can monitor it, and it's quite interesting. And sometimes I'll change a little something and it'll make a big effect. That one I give up on. I initially said one of my top 10 finds, and I'm being dead serious. For me personally, it was one of my top 10 finds ever as a geologist. But it still did. It's doing fine, 120,000. Then I did the John Wesley Powell Enigma, another big one. So there are two really big ones I did that took a lot of time and effort. Arches National Park and this one were really big, and actually the Thermopolis one was pretty big. I might mention on the Thermopolis one, my first day of shooting, I had a crew from Cowboy State Daily come along with me and just film, and they did their own little video about what I do. If you want to know a little bit more about me and my process and who I am, just put my name in YouTube, type my name, and Cowboy State Daily, which is kind of the biggest digital paper here in Wyoming. Let's see. Then I went on to not too far from my house here, 70 miles away or so. More information, different conclusion. And then, well, I'll be darned, I did another big one. I've forgotten how many big ones I did. Then I went to Zion National Park. That was a multi-day long deal. Loved it. Zion National Park is so beautiful, so I can't complain about being there. And that's doing quite well, 300,000. And then here comes Texas. I mean, what can you say? Those Texans, I don't know. They don't have a whole lot of surface geology. They do, and you go down to Big Bend National Park and you get to the Cap Rocks, and there are a couple scattered places, but for the most part, not a whole lot on the surface geology. But boy, they've treated me well. That's already got 1.9 million, almost 1.9 million. And then my final one is not as performing as well. I've decided I can't predict, what's going to go. I just have no idea what's going to go well or not. In fact, the Texas one, I filmed the year prior. And I had done a video on salt and oil, which didn't perform well. And I thought, oh, people just aren't interested in anything, involved with what is petroleum? Where does it come from? How did geologists find it? All that. And I had that all filmed last year. And I thought, I'm just going to put that on the shelf. And then late this year, I thought, and I had an idea of that came to me, a couple months prior, of maybe how to do a catchy title and thumbnail, which is a big deal. I mean, that's how people enter the door. And so I released it, a year later, and boom. So there you go. I had no idea. I don't know what's going to be popular. And then the last one I did, Azerbaijan and these mud volcanoes and other mud volcanoes around the world, and the thumbnail with this big blue eye. I was convinced that I was going to have two in a row, 1 million plus views, just boom, in a few weeks or something. And it's doing fine, but not what I expected. So it goes to show you how much I know. My wife showed me a note. Someone had asked, do I do all my camera work, my own camera work? I do. Early, I had my brother helping me do drone shots. He would fly the drone. And then they got the technology going good enough where I can easily fly the drone myself and have it do exactly what I want while I'm basically not looking at it, so it just seems natural. So since that point, which is some time ago now, I think he helped me out the first maybe 5 videos, be a guess. I do everything on my own. I get ideas from people though. So it's been a good year. I can't complain, that's for sure. So I'm just here. I haven't looked at what's coming through here. Mud volcanoes loved it. Now, see, I'm talking to you guys who are the diehard fans, and many of you, probably most of you, watch all my videos. I mean, you're really into geology, and I've found through other YouTube geologists like Sean Wilsey and stuff, and others, Nick Zentner and GeoGirl, we have a lot of overlap, which makes sense because if you love geology, you're just going to find anything you can and watch it. And most of you probably are that way. So what's the mud volcano one? The title is Solving the Mystery of the Giant Eye. Yeah, that's the mud volcano one. Of course, I don't tell people it's a mud volcano. That's kind of my style, as you guys know. I like to create mystery or let you learn and make observations and develop concepts and see if you're right. That's kind of the way I do it. And people seem to enjoy that, so that's great. Do a Mars geology video. Someone by a real popular channel, Elder Fox or something Fox, reached out to me. He follows the Mars stuff, and he wanted to do a collaboration. And in the end, it's just, it's not something I'm an expert at, and I'd have to spend a lot of time, unless it's something obvious, geologically obvious, on the imagery But so I just kind of declined. I've got such a long list of things that I could potentially create videos of. And I keep this note on my phone, that just when an idea pops in my head, I put it there and I get ideas. Many of the ideas come from people that watch my videos, like you guys. And it's hard to know when the right one's going to come up and I actually do the work on it. Typically, let me take a video. Let me say, on Zion National Park. I'd thought about that for literally a year, at least a year, about how I would approach it. How would I do it differently? Or bring something new to the table. And all my videos, I do that. And I spend a lot of time just going through it. And finally, it dawned on me what I wanted to do. I envisioned the title, I think I say, The Most Sand the World Has Ever Known, right? And then I show a blob of all this sand that was in the Western United States. and go from there, and that was going to lead into Zion National Park. And that's what I do on all of them, even the obvious ones like the Thermopolis hot springs, right in my backyard, essentially. I thought about that for well over a year, probably 2 years, just trying to figure out a creative way to present it that would make it interesting to the general public and to geologists. I do have a lot of geologists that follow me. Okay, let's see. I'll look at a couple of these notes that are here popping up here. Love to see a White Pocket video. There is an area near White Pocket that has some similar features that I may go there, where I don't have people running all over trying to film when I have, 100 people on the outcrop. So I may do something there. I've got that on my list, actually. Okay. Now, this is one reason I don't do these live streams very often, but here's a good reason to tune in. And I'm going to give you a little insight onto some videos that one video I'm working on right now, and some that I'm thinking of doing that I'm pretty confident I'm going to do. And just so you kind of get a heads up, I'm working on a video now that, and gosh, I hate to spoil it for you. I don't have tons of people tuning in right now. I don't know how many there are, 260. That's a lot of people, but compared to the views I get on a video, I don't want to spoil anything. Let me think how I'll do this. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to tell you, this was my whole thought process, is there's an outcrop of rock that is boring. Most anybody that would walk up past this outcrop of rock, actually, I'm sorry to say, a lot of geologists would walk right on by it and never really pay attention to it. And that's one thing, the message I often try to make is, with geology, it doesn't have to be the spectacular, the wonderful colors or the folded layers or whatever. If many times you go up to something, not knowing what's there, of course, and you get looking and you discover treasure, what I often refer to as treasure. And some of my funnest experiences have been doing that, and this is one of them. And so that's going to be how I present it, is gosh, why do I even want to look at this rock? And then the more you look into it, the more you like it. And a nice addition to that is I ended up going out to the Bahamas on an island, Exuma Island of the Bahamas, for this video with my wife. So that was a nice little perk. So that's that one. Another one that I've been thinking about for a very long time are the Wind River Mountains. I love the Wind River Mountains, although I haven't hiked around in them much at all. I need to get to know them better. But I drive through South Pass on the way to Salt Lake City or that region, or if I'm going to Moab or whatever. And it's been on my mind from day one. How would I handle the Wind River Mountains? And let's see, it was just a little over a year ago. I was driving back home with the beautiful Wind River Mountains. Any of you that have been on that high plateau, Farson, Wyoming, I know some of you will have been there. I was driving home, the beautiful Wind Rivers. I'm heading towards South Pass, and it just clicked. And then I knew I was ready to do this video. And the title of it is The Impossible Mountain. That's what the initial title, unless no one clicks on it, I may change it. But I will tell you something about the Wind River Mountains that is unbelievable. It's completely, well, it's unbelievable. So when those mountains form, I'll take my fingers as if they're a layer of rock, and you squeeze the rock and it folds over, just whoa, and it forms the mountain. And if it keeps folding, it can't fold anymore, and it breaks, a fault, a big fault. The vertical displacement. Now, let me talk about vertical displacement. Let's say my left hand here is a layer of rock, and when it folds up, It went from here to here. So that vertical height, not the length along the fault, but literally how much it lifted up vertically. Now, it's a combination, before I give you the answer, it's a combination of uplift. And if you'll know from some of my other videos, when you load things, when you're braking and putting a fault and load, you load this lithosphere and you have a basin forming out in front of that mountain. So it's sinking on one side and lifting on the other. And you have this ginormous fault and the vertical displacement. Now, I'm going to get you guys to start guessing what the vertical displacement is on the Wind River thrust. It's a back thrust for those of you that are geologists or into that. Just a little interest there. What is the vertical displacement? And I'm not going to tell you here for a bit, okay? I see 3,000 feet. You're a bit off. It's a bit higher. It's a bit more, okay? Thrust fault is just a fault. You have a normal fault where you have tension. If you pull things apart, one side will drop down, kind of drop. A compressional fault, you create what are often referred to as thrust faults or reverse faults. And I won't get into the details there. Okay, 30,000 feet, 23,000 feet, 8 kilometers. It's a bit more. Yeah, believe it or not. Okay. Hello from Ohio. A lot. Yes. And that's one reason I call it the impossible mountain. As geologists begin to map this mountain and get more and more data, I'll bet they couldn't get their head around it. 17,000. Yeah, 17,500. Someone's really on the ball. They carry it right down to the 500 feet. Yep. That's confidence. I like that. Well, the vertical displacement. Now, before I tell you too, when this comes up like this rock is eroded. You know, there's a lot of erosion, but it's quite simple to actually project, because back where the layers are not eroded, you can kind of project easily. It's fairly simple. Project where they were up in the sky, so to speak, before they were eroded. But let's see, I want to make sure I get that number right. Yeah, 75,000 feet. 75,000 feet of vertical displacement. Now that is hard to get your head around. So just a spectacular story there. Okay. How long did the thrust fault? Oh, probably 10 million years, something like that. Long time, but short time if you're a geologist. One I'm considering doing, and if I do, it'll probably be this spring, is the Grand Canyon. Now there again, what would you guys do? I mean, you know how many videos there are on the Grand Canyon? Educational videos and papers and books. And what could Myron Cook bring that's new to the Grand Canyon? Or not necessarily new, but a different way to view it and comprehend what's going on. I'll tell you, I finally, and I've known this, and I've just been circling around, trying to, okay, what would I do? And trying to visualize it. So this is another one. When you're standing on the south rim of the Grand Canyon, or the north rim, the deepest part of the canyon, it's about a mile deep. Did you know that canyon is actually twice as deep? Yeah, twice as deep. It may even be more. I've got to do all the math and look at, because see, the rim of the Grand Canyon is the Kaibab limestone, which I know quite well because I was working the unit right on top of it, the Moenkopi Formation. The Kaibab limestone is like cement, and it forms the rim. So here's the edge of the canyon. You walk up, you're on the edge of the canyon, You're on the Kaibab limestone. It's like a big layer of cement. So all the layers above the Kaibab limestone, the Moenkopi is the first one. It's very shaly, soft. So it erodes way back. You have to drive over to Flagstaff. Well, you can catch little pieces of it, but you get a Flagstaff before you start seeing Moenkopi because it's been eroded way back from the rim and all the other units beyond that. So if you could bring all those units that have been eroded in the Grand Canyon, bring them up to the edge because they haven't been stripped back, bring them right up to the edge, the Grand Canyon's twice as deep. That's pretty cool. So that's kind of my main thing that I'll be doing on the Grand Canyon. I've got another video that's in the can, is what they used to say. You know, I have all the video done. I need to do it. I'm just still trying to figure out exactly near the Great Salt Lake, some really fascinating patterns that you see on Google Earth that my son-in-law Jason asked me about. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, wow, this is very interesting. So we went out there and it turned out to be a great story. Still not sure exactly what the full message of that would be. But anyway, those are some ideas and I have others going. So hopefully I'll have a good year next year. Halifax, Nova Scotia. I've been there. My daughter-in-law grew up in right near, well, was it in Halifax? Dartmouth? Yeah, right close there. Yeah. Do a video about Ohio. I'm sure there's plenty you could do. There's so much. Can you come to the Panhandle and Playa Lakes? I may do something on Playa Lakes, but if I do that, it'd probably be in the Basin Range, probably, if I do that. I've got that on my list. Okay. Someone's into White Pocket, all right. From Montana, like your videos a lot. Plans for Australia. Oh, you know, if I were younger and wanted to I've traveled too much in my life. I'm just a little reluctant to travel a lot now. But when I was in school, working on my bachelor's degree at the University of Wyoming, I learned about what's referred to as the Canning Basin on the west side of Australia. And I still remember it as clear as day in the old photos. And I went back a year ago and just started seeing what the new information is on it. But there's a Devonian age reef, very old reef, that it was covered with shale, but has been eroded away. And I'll tell you what, that reef looks like it was like the water left yesterday, more or less. I mean, it is an unbelievable place to go. I would love to go to the Canning Basin there in that reef, the Devonian reef, but golly, don't know. Pyrenees, I've been there. Beautiful mountains, good food up in there. Yeah. Travel via Google Earth. Yeah, I tend to do that. The mud volcanoes, I did that. Used pretty much all the Google Earth. You know, during the winter, I can do that. But I still prefer to be out on the rocks if I can. Do I use AI? I did on one video for a couple photos. No, I did one where I had a little short video clip of a meteor going, you know, something that's obviously I can't, you know, just shows a meteor going. So I tried it once and it's like, nah, it's just not for me. So I think I only have one video that had it had one short video clip and one or two photos, and then I just, no. So I'll never do that again. Well, unless it's real obvious. I'm okay with it if it's obviously AI. You know, it could be helpful, but in general, no. Okay. Let's talk about my field trip. So last year I had 28. I typically try to keep it around 23 to 24 at the max. And prior years, I have people cancel out. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to plan for that. So I I accepted 28 and not a single person canceled out. So boy, it was a bit much. It's just hard to have these vehicles and where we go and just manage it all. So unfortunately that we have to limit it. So I typically have, over 100 people, 150 or so people that want to go. So that's a bit unfortunate. But it's a 2-day trip. It's June 6th and 7th. Okay. It's $150 per person for this 2-day trip. June 6th and 7th, Saturday and a Sunday. If you want to go, send me an email and I'll get all the list of people and then just pick a group of people. But the email that you use to send this is Myron Geologist. MyronGeologist@gmail.com. You send me an email expressing your interest and I'll get you on that list and we'll just see and cross your fingers and hopefully you get on it. Now, where do we go? We go Sheep Mountain, around Sheep Mountain. And I've done several videos that are close around Sheep Mountain, including the Sawtooth Mystery that's quite popular. And several of my videos. In fact, the one I was telling you about, this boring outcrop of rock that I'm working on right now, is near Sheep Mountain. So we'll spend some time around Sheep Mountain on one day. And another day, we get a little further to the north, not too far from Lovell, Wyoming. And then we go up right to the edge of the Bighorn Mountains and we go, 2/3 the way up the mountain on an old highway, an old abandoned highway, and see some pretty amazing things and have some interesting puzzles to ponder. So that's what's happening on my field trip. Let's see. Okay, Q&A time. The advantage I have here with the Q&A is I can look through here and go find the ones, the questions that I go, oh yeah, I think I'll mention that. If you're in a crowd of people and you point at someone, they may ask a question that's a real ringer. South Africa, and love the Karoo Basin. I haven't worked the Karoo Basin. I've worked offshore South Africa. Amazing geology. There's a rift sequence out there. So when the continents pull apart, there's a whole series of, how should I word it? A series of deposits and layers of rock that form as the continents pull apart. You'll get some lake deposits. That makes sense. You start tearing a continent apart, lakes will start forming. And then you keep pulling it apart. And of course, there are faults involved in everything, which are important that you see in the data. And then eventually it opens up enough that the sea, it opens a pathway into the ocean. Now you have restricted flow within that pull apart and the rift basin. And now you deposit salt and so on. And it's pretty interesting. It's quite predictable. And I've seen them all around the world. It's kind of cool when you hit a rift sequence. So in some ways, geology is predictable. Okay. Is it true New Zealand is the youngest landmass in the world? I don't know. That sounds interesting. You've got me interested. Why are the Black Hills so far out in the front of the Rockies? There's a lot of debate still going on as to why that's the case, including the Bighorn Mountains. Why did the Laramide get so far east? And there's some theories about the underwriting plate that was subducting, normally way further west where it dives deep, but here it's down, it's not so steep, it's more shallow. And then there are pieces of it that detach and all kinds of complications. So they have some good theories, but it is a bit of a puzzler. Let's see. Are the mountains around Salt Lake City part of the Rockies? Yeah, the Uintas were. Uh, there was part of an earlier. So the Laramide orogeny that's so well known is kind of the last pulse. There was an earlier pulse just right in front of it, and essentially a continuation of it is named the Sevier orogeny. So the Wasatch Mountains are part of that Sevier orogeny, and then through time it just worked further and further east. Yeah, if you go to Petra, Jordan, I've not been to Petra. I've been very close. We were planning on going there, couldn't make it. Giant trees, and why are geologists turning a blind eye to this? Well, I think that's a good thought. I know there are a lot of people that believe about these giant trees. And I did one, they're not super giant. I had a video called Giant Petrified Trees. And there, if you'll watch that one, I think maybe that'll help you understand why, why I think the way I do. The first thing in this particular case, you go up to it and it's made of sandstone. You can take your hand lens and look at it, and it's just all these silica quartz sandstone, tiny little grains. So you might watch that video and that might help you understand where I come from. I'm a hiker, love the rocks, but you're frustrated, you don't know them better. Well, just keep after it. You'll build a knowledge base and just keep going. Just be observant, and yeah. I'm going to show you something to make my point further a little more. In fact, I'm going to use this in my presentation in Thermopolis. Is you would think, and I do, geologists often have really cool specimens, and I have some really cool specimens. Now, my desk space is pretty limited, but I have a few special things I keep on my desk, and you might be surprised at what they are. Let me grab a sample. This. Now, if I can get it here, I'm going to have this at my Thermopolis presentation, and 99% of people would look at this and go, what a boring piece of rock. And I can't disagree. I have a lot more samples that are very sexy. This is just sandstone. It's got some slightly more rich in feldspars. If I can do this backwards, the darker streaks in it have a little higher feldspar content in it. But that's not why I kept it. Why I have this. This is a piece of the Flathead sandstone, and for me is profound. It's finally when the first ocean came in over the continents and created the great unconformity. These are beach rocks and or tidal rocks, or just offshore. I'm not sure which one this would be. That's not important, but really close to the shoreline. 550 million year old beach rock, and it's the first when life started getting good for us here on Earth again. The ocean coming in, and that's why I have this on my desk. And that's the point I want to make as you get more and more familiar with geology, you can go and pick up this and appreciate it to such a profound level that you decide to keep it on your desk for the rest of your life. And no one else can appreciate that, but you do. It can be your own personal treasure. So I love that about geology. Maybe I'll show you one more. Those of you, I've used it in a couple videos, but this particular organic rich shale provides, I wish I knew the percentage. It's the Permian age organic shale, source rock in the Permian Basin of Texas. Boy, is it responsible for a lot of the energy we use. A lot of the energy we use. So I have this nice core sample. This was cut from drilling a well, you know, and it's just a little chip out of the cylindrical tube of rock that we had of this source rock. So that just popped into my head here as I glanced over at my desk here. Okay. Yeah. Coal. It does. That sample I showed you looks a lot like coal, but it isn't. Coal is made of woody material, and this source rock is plankton type material, algae and things like that. Marine life, single-celled marine life for the most part. Is the dark color carbon? Yeah, it's essentially carbon. Serpentinite. Oh boy, yeah. Okay, diatoms. They are interesting. Let me tell you something. You go to Monterey, California, where they have this diatomaceous rock. One thing I learned, I don't remember who told me this. I said, one way you know it's diatomaceous rock. I had my boys do that. Do you remember that, dear? Yeah. I have 3 sons, 1 daughter, and we were on the beach, and I said, let me show you something. I took a piece of that rock. It's very lightweight, highly porous. Stuck out my tongue, set it on my tongue, and it just sticks to your tongue. Just sticks there because of how almost like suction. It's more of a suction. It's not a yucky, sticky thing at all. But try that the next time you're out there where you have diatom rock. Okay. How deep was that core collected? Oh, that was around 9,000 feet. White sands are not sands. Well, that's a good point. Now, it turns out geologists, when they say technically sandstone, most geologists, when you say sandstone, they're meaning sand-sized particles of primarily quartz, like the classic sandstone. But it turns out it's actually a size classification. So so I always specify because I don't want to confuse people. Anything that has detrital grains, meaning something that's broken apart from another, well, actually not even detrital, I take that back. Anything that has individual grains that are of a certain size, if they fit in that category of sand size, then we call it a sandstone, believe it or not. Or a grain, sometimes we'll use the word grainstone. But I prefer to just use sandstone for the siliciclastic and then say a grainstone with sand-sized particles, or, help make sure we're on the same page. Okay. The consensus on the stone spheres found in Costa Rica. I think they're the same as the concretions. Like I did a video on concretions, but I haven't been to them, but I'm pretty sure that's what they are. Do I typically follow along on established trails or do you blaze a trail? I pretty much always go cross country. I like to forge my own trail because I'm always looking around. I see something here. Of course, I tend to hike in a lot of deserty areas. If I'm in vegetation stuff, heavily vegetated, of course, I'd use a trail. But I'm just wandering around. I see something that catches my eye. I'm over there. Then I'm somewhere else. And a nice thing about that is I can cover a lot of ground without really realizing it because I'm so busy focused on what's going on. So I can get a good hike in and not be stressed about it. Just take a lot of time. Okay. Zebra rock samples. Yeah. All the unconformities like the Grand Canyon. I did one on the Great Unconformity, and see, I love to brag about Wyoming. We've got the Grand Canyon beat on the Great Unconformity. The Great Unconformity and the Grand Canyon is 500 million year old rock or so, sitting on top of 1.7 billion year old rock, huge unconformity. But in Wyoming, it's 500 and some odd million year old rock, that sandstone I just showed you, sitting on, and I actually have a sample of it. Let me get it. It's the one other sample I have. I'm very envious. I have a friend of mine, a geologist, that actually found a hand sample of rock with the Great Unconformity in it. Ooh. So this is the rock that this sample that I showed you, the sandstone. This is Precambrian, 2.7 billion years old. You know, it's 1 billion years older than the one in the Grand Canyon. So we've got them, and the outcrops of the Great Unconformity. If you happen to be interested in the outcrops, putting your hand on it, which I highly recommend, Wyoming's the place to do it. There are some really spectacular places to do it, and you can watch my video on the Snowball Earth and the Great Unconformity or something like that. Okay. At work, we have 18 million year old rock on top of 1.7. That's interesting. Wow. That's young rock sitting on very old rock. Cool. Have I explored the Wyoming kimberlite formations much? No, I haven't. When I was at the University of Wyoming, we went out to one of the kimberlite pipes, and that's the most I've done. They had been digging in there, I think, looking for diamonds near Laramie, as I recall. And the interesting thing I will tell you that was fascinating is all the maps prior to the discovery of these kimberlites didn't have any Silurian age rock in the state of Wyoming. They knew it had been deposited, but it had been removed. You know, that was the theory. And it turns out when they found these kimberlites, and they were mining down, they ran into samples of Silurian age rock, which is really cool. So when that kimberlite was active, there was Silurian age rock that broke off and worked its way down in a ways, down in this kimberlite pipe, where it was preserved to be eroded later to where we could see it. In fact, a Professor Don Boyd, he's the one that studied these samples, and they found beautiful fossils in some of those Silurian rocks, and they proved that indeed there were Silurian age rocks, at least in that area. So that's a really cool story about it. That'd make kind of a cool video now that I think about it. Kimberlite pipe in Arkansas. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What else we got going? How can a young person find a job and make a career out of geology? Well, you know, I'm not up to speed on it enough. You know, you have the environmental geology, which a lot of geologists are employed. Of course, you have academia, both academia. Then you have mining. Now that apparently, as I understand, makes perfect sense. There's a real need right now for geologists to help with these discover and mine, et cetera, rare earth minerals. You know, that's a big deal. Then, of course, you have petroleum geology for the oil and gas industry. And there are probably some others I'm not thinking of. They're out there, but you kind of have to be determined. It's not a real big, there aren't a lot of opportunities. It's just not flooded with opportunities. But if you're serious about it and you're a good student, you'll find a way. Palo Duro Canyon, yeah, beautiful place, indeed. What's the wildest geological puzzle you've ever solved in the field? Oh, and I might do a video on it. And one that comes to mind, there are a few, but one that comes to mind, and I think it's a holy grail outcrop. I stumbled across an outcrop that was what's called a crevasse splay. So these rivers, if they're really slow moving, meandering around like the Mississippi River, they build up banks on the side, just higher banks, especially as you get out towards the delta. And during a flood, they can break through and form kind of like a mini delta right off the side of the main one. And I found an ancient one in the rock record that was beautifully exposed, and it just took me a while to figure it out. But when I did, it was like, wow, it was really a lot of fun. They're always fun when you make a breakthrough. Okay. Yeah, the Wyoming Geology website is WyoGeo. They do a great job. I sent them a note years ago and told them, you guys do a great job on that. I think it's called WyoGeo. I use it every now and then. I need to go through it. I haven't gone through it in a year or so just to see what's going on, if they're adding to it. Heart Mountain that's way crazy, but I didn't do any of the original work on Heart Mountain on that slide. The only thing I can say I did do is I have the very best, and I'm thinking of redoing it, the very best video available, or images of the detachment surface that giant landslide broke free on, because I had a drone. And there happened to be a forest fire up on the mountain where you can see it so well. And at the time I did it, I had decided, and I regret this, to not shoot 4K video or publish 4K video. I should have right from day one. So I'm thinking about just going back with my better drone. I've got a much better drone now, and acquiring really good video along that, where this really well-known detachment or outcrop is, and video, and just stick it out on YouTube just so people can see it. Probably wouldn't do a video other than just say, hey, this is for posterity, because those trees will grow back and you won't see it like you do now. Okay. Yeah, my wife's holding up something about paintings and photography. I do paint. I haven't painted in a while. I keep telling myself I need to do that. I do oil painting and photography. I use most of the photos you see, especially if I'm out on the rocks, they're definitely mine. But even a lot of them that I like, if in the winter time when I'm doing geology videos, I often am able to use photos that I have taken over the years. So, and now it's kind of turned. I still take still photos and think about it and take them when I'm out in the field, but now I've kind of evolved a lot more onto the video side of thing, which has been an interesting transition. Okay. BC, Canada. Oh yeah, British Columbia's, wow. Where was that place I went skiing? British Columbia. What? Kimberly. Yeah, man. Best skiing I've ever done. It was a small resort, fantastic snow, nobody on there. The snow was great for like 3 days in a row. Okay. Yeah, the drone, someone's commenting about drones and how it helps. Boy, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, the drones I use are DJI drones, and they have been outlawed now, banned. I think the old ones, since I already have them, I can still use them, but they have Hasselblad lenses on them, and the technology they use to fly is just top level, and that's what I use. And when I found out about this, I went out and bought another one to have it as a reserve, and they're not cheap. So I'm hoping I have enough drones to last through this until some new manufacturer or something comes along. I don't know. It has me a bit worried. 300 plus people. Yeah, chilling with Myron. Montana is impressive. It sure is. Beautiful, beautiful state. You know, I'm so open-minded now. I can't think of a place I haven't been or that I've been that I've thought is not beautiful. I don't know what that means. Some I find a little more beautiful, but West Texas landscape I used in a recent video, just wide open, nothing, nothing. I don't know. I still like it. Parts of Wyoming are that way. The desert, when I was growing up, we have the Badlands nearby. I didn't think those were cool at all. It was all about the mountains because they're green, and you have creeks and rivers and all that, fishing and everything in the mountains. And then when I went to grad school in Arizona is when I first really started really thinking about the deserts. And well, there you go. Awesome place too. Uh, Hi from Canada. Hi. Yeah. Wyoming is a much more beautiful state than I remember from when I was young and dumb. We kind of laugh, locals laugh a little bit. A lot of exposure to Wyoming comes from I-80 going down through Laramie, Rock Springs, Rawlins, and it's some of the most open. I still love it, just wide open, nothing though, sagebrush plains and everything. And people decide that that's Wyoming, and we kind of laugh, and the locals say, "Well, I'm sure glad I-80's there. Everyone decides Wyoming isn't worth hanging around in, so we still have it's the least populated state of all states. So I'm okay with that." Stone Mountain, Georgia. I'm not familiar with Stone Mountain. I'll have to look at that. You love West Texas. It does grow on you. What we lived in Midland for a few years. It wasn't the landscape so much for me as the people. The West Texas people were just so kind. Different accents and things, different ways of doing things, but we sure liked it. Saskatchewan. Yeah. Boy, the oil sands, that'd be an interesting one. Favorite state gemstone? Well, gosh, I'd have to know what the state gemstones are. I actually have no idea what the state gemstone of Wyoming would be. Maybe jade, but I'm not sure. Uh, there's so many things. Uh, a lot of questions here. One thing I want to reemphasize is for people, if you can, just go out and start looking at rocks and making your own observations. And like, I'll go up to an outcrop of rock and I might find a little fossil in it. And then I literally spend a minute. I'll spend a couple minutes and just think about the full life cycle of this fossil. Let's say it's a trilobite, and that it was buried usually very, very deeply. It lived its life out, buried very deeply for 500 million years in this case, finally uplifted because of a mountain building event, and erosion occurred, just more erosion and more erosion. And you know how many trilobites have been eroded and washed down into the ocean before it got to this one I'm looking at? And I'm looking at it, and I get kind of weird a little, I'll admit. I'm thinking, how is it that my life came to connect with this trilobite, this fossil trilobite? What are the odds, and how this all came together? It just gives me an opportunity to think about not only the trilobite, but the whole history of the earth and how we're all so interconnected. I love that about it. Geology is rock. Yes, it is. uh, wow. A geological location that you'd like to visit that you've never been to. I'd like to spend a couple of weeks in the Gobi Desert. Yeah, there's some really cool geology surrounding that whole region. Yeah, Himalayas. Yeah. What's something you've come across that made you wonder how did that happen? Hmm. Well, it happens so much. I'm just trying to think of one that's a little interesting. I remember many years ago, I was looking at some rock and it looked upside down because there are ways you can tell as a geologist if it's upside down. And I decided that it was. And then I had to figure out, wow, I've got to look at this more carefully, figure out how it got upside down. And because it wasn't a real good outcrop. But if you think about it, if I take a fold, start compressing rock, and it folds, this limb here, we call it the limb of the fold, goes upside down. So it folds over, it flips upside down basically, and if you have it eroded away like I did, you don't see the whole fold. I was just seeing a little part of it, of the upside down limb, the overturned limb of that fold. That was confusing. Laramie, Wyoming convinced me to declare a major in geology after my first trip cross country, 1998. Yeah. Always disappointing and puzzling to me that more people are not fascinated by geology. I must say I feel the same way, but I've come to just fully realize and understand that actually the vast majority of people aren't aren't that interested in geology and typically aren't that curious about most of the sciences. Typically, that's not fair. And I guess we're just all wired differently. They have interests that I'm not interested in. It might be maybe electronics or something or programming or in a way, I guess I'm glad we're all different because we might not have computers, which I find quite handy. Santa Monica Mountains. I've driven through them. Beautiful mountains. Yes, indeed. What's the thickest riverbeds that you've heard of? Well, that depends on whether you call it a single deposit of a river or rivers, if they're in a basin that's subsiding, can just keep building up and up and up. So you can have a series of river deposits that just stack on top of each other because the bottom is falling out underneath. It's giving it space. We call it accommodation space, a very, very important principle. I always move my head the wrong way. A very important principle is accommodation space. For rock to be preserved, there has to be space for it to deposit within. So if you think about the United States, we'll take North America, United States right now, take all of North America. There's almost no place that deposition is occurring except for in some lakes or if you get to the shores, of course. But we're talking the continent. It would really only be lakes and some minor deposits here and there, but they won't last because it's all being eroded. All these lake deposits that we love so much, all scattered across, assuming erosion continues, they'll all be gone. They'll all be gone. We'll become the Canadian Shield. Everything will erode right down. And that happens over and over again. It's a fascinating cycle. So, accommodation space, like these river deposits, if you have a basin forming and it keeps building up, I can think of a series of stacked river deposits that are, say, 1,000 feet or so, like that. So, it can be impressive in that certain situations. Am I a fisherman? Kind of. Off and on, I do fly fishing. I used to really get into it. Um, Old water, 4 billion years old. I have thought about doing, it turns out that this is a concept many of you won't be familiar with, but rock, uh, most rock, as it's being deposited near surface, has a lot of space in it, open pore space. And it's most of the rocks are being deposited in oceans. That's what gets preserved anyway. And so you have ocean water mixed with that rock. It's just like you're on the beach today. You go out there and you wade offshore a foot or two, all that sediment, all that sandstone or carbonate grainstone or whatever is full of ocean water. And that water stays in those pores as it gets buried deeper and deeper and is compacting. And so when you go and drill a well deep, once you get below the freshwater aquifer near surface and get down in there a ways, if there's any pore space, it's not full of air. It's full of seawater. 99.999% of the time, it's got seawater in it. And the cool thing to think about, and I've thought about this too, and this is a weird Myron thing, is that seawater that's trapped in, say, if you're in Jurassic Age rock, that was the same water that the dinosaurs were bathing in. So that's kind of cool, really old waters. And you can date them indirectly. There may even be ways sometime, I don't, but you can definitely do it indirectly. Okay. Okay, I want to remind people, and we're getting close here. I might go another few minutes. I've got a lot of people hanging on, so maybe I'll go a while. Gosh. If you guys vote for Encore, I might go for a bit. I want to remind you guys about my field trip. If you want to go on it, it's June 6th and 7th. Okay, and you send an email to express your interest to Myron Geologist. One word, myrongeologist@gmail.com, and I'll get you on the list. Again, I can only take like 23 or so. So a small percentage, unfortunately, of people that express interest, at least in years past. I've had a lot of people express interest. Okay. Weird Myron thought. Love it. Yeah, I have. My dear wife, Merlane, will tell you I have a lot of weird Myron thoughts. Okay. How deep is the lowest drop of water? That's a great question. Turns out there's water, let's say drop of water within pore space, okay, that started in the ocean. Okay, we're not talking about other waters. As you bury rock deeper and deeper and deeper, especially with time and depth, those pores just start closing down and you get less and less pore space. So, for instance, something at the surface may have 30% porosity. Let's just take a sandstone that's made of primarily quartz grains. It might have 30% porosity or so at the surface, and the pores are full of water, gets buried and it compacts. Lots of compaction, and then you have minerals start precipitating within those pores, and that's what turns it to rock. I get that question a lot. Why is it all rock? Because it started as loose sand. It's because of these mineral-rich pore waters. They start precipitating out cement within it, literally cementing in the grains. And so the pores get smaller and smaller. And boy, it's really hard to get more than about 5% porosity when you round down 10,000 feet or so depth. You can get some strange situations sometimes where you preserve some of that. I've seen porosity at 14,000 feet, but now that's a real risk for geologists looking for hydrocarbons because you need pore space. And they go, ooh, boy, there's a good chance we might have 2 or 3% porosity. And then, I don't know. So you get around 15,000 feet, 20,000 feet, man, it's just going to be completely compacted or cemented together, and you'll have very, very little pore space. Okay. Somebody looking at rocks and landscapes gave birth to geology in Britain. True, true. The Map That Changed the World. Great book. I have it here somewhere. Simon Winchester. I'm surprised I remembered his name. Um, have I published any books? No, and I thought about it. And the amount of time and effort that goes into publishing a book is really high, which is fine with me. But my end goal is educating people, and I can put out one video, and get a lot more reach a lot more people than with publishing a book. It's a different world, and it's a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier to do what I do than publish a book. But I only have a limited amount of supply. I'd like to do one, actually. It'd be kind of a fun project, but boy, it'd just take all my time. Yeah. Okay. Who else have we got? Oh, there's Nick. Hi, Nick. Yeah, I don't do many live streams, Nick. This is Nick Zentner. While he's listening to me, I really appreciate Nick Zentner. One of my early videos he commented on and gave me some encouraging words, because in my view, Nick is the pioneer of YouTube geology and does an awesome job. And especially, I think, this is just my personal bias, Nick, is when you get on those chalkboards and you're in the lecture room, man, you work magic. I couldn't begin to do that. Not even begin to do it. So it's great to have you here. Write a book with AI. Yeah. What else? Could a seaway open back up in the western U.S.? Absolutely. Anything's possible in geology. That's the wonderful thing about it. And another thing I like to do is work in reverse. So there are outcrops that you can go to, say in Wyoming. I'll use Wyoming, of course, where and this is the next video I do, it'll become very obvious that it's once a beautiful tropical paradise. And I mentioned I went to the Bahamas recently for this video. But you can think in reverse, and you can be in the Bahamas thinking, in the future, this could be Wyoming sitting at 10,000 feet of elevation. So, man, fun to think about. Okay. People saying how much they love Nick. Absolutely. We all do. Have you ever, I love how you explain the sediment in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's see. I was looking over here at my other rock samples. Oh, I'll show you I've shown you two rock samples, boring rock samples. I'll show you another one. Can't remember where I got that one. Okay, one of the few ones, again, pretty boring. Many of you will have samples that look much nicer than this, a piece of jasper, chert. And one of the videos I did that pretty much no one watched, much of the chert comes from this, a siliceous sponge. And they are really sturdy. I wish I could tell you how sturdy. Glass fibers. These are glass fibers. It's not going to, boy, my hand's shaking. Let me see if I can get it to focus. See the network on that? Isn't that amazing? Silica fibers, glass fibers, siliceous sponge, and they live on the seafloor like this. And then, of course, as they die and break apart, They can get quite concentrated in rock, and they can dissolve, so to speak, and reprecipitate and form chert. Many of the cherts come from sponge spicules, siliceous sponge spicules. Yep. I bought that little siliceous sponge just for the video I did, and that was fun. So I have that. Okay. Chert is my favorite rock. I didn't even know. I didn't know. I didn't know how chert was formed. Well, much of it is formed from siliceous organisms, often sponge spicules, but you can have other siliceous organisms as well. But sponge spicules is a real common one. How can a non-geology PhD make meaningful contributions? You know, what I'm finding on YouTube channels is there are people that are not necessarily highly educated in a particular discipline and can bring a lot because they're good educators. They have the ability to communicate and bring something different. That's really, really common. And sometimes they can go astray, and okay, that's fine, but so what I would say is if you can learn anything to a reasonably good level and are a good communicator, you can make a difference, just by doing something like YouTube geology or YouTube whatever. But it's a highly competitive space, that's for sure. So you've got to have there has to be something that you do that somehow attracts people. Chert is basically quartz. Yes. Uh, it's totally wild how biology can substantially inform geology. Yeah, it's when you think about it, much of the rock is actually biology. Almost all limestone is, for instance, and there's a lot of limestone out there. It's all biology. Um, so small organisms, though. Well, okay. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I probably should do these live streams a little more often. This is the first one I've had go in a long time that didn't have some kind of a technical problem, but we seem to have made it through without any technical issues. So I'm grateful for that. I hope to see hopefully a few of you on my field trip coming up. And remember, I'll leave you with the parting thought to use geology to contemplate bigger things. I think that's what it is. In fact, one of the trips I led for the community, I love to do things like, well, you know me, I throw curveballs. They're on a geology trip, and instead of showing them geology at the first outcrop, I unrolled a big photo that I'd printed, big scale, big, of the deep, what do they call that? Yeah, the Hubble Deep Field with all the universes and stuff, or not universes, but galaxies and all that in there. Just spectacular. And I showed that to everyone, and they're going, "Oh, what's this got to do?" And I'm going, "This has everything to do for me. The way I view geology is I have the same feelings when I encounter geology, when I get into it, as I do looking into the heavens at all the galaxies and stars." So hopefully you'll influence people around you and get them more interested in geology and maybe pull themselves away from the couch or the TV or whatever and get out if they are so able to go do some of their own exploring and find their own treasures. So all of you have a good evening. I've really enjoyed talking to you and hope to meet you sometime. We'll see you.